Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to dive straight into the critical post-sprint reality of Agile medical device software. If you're building software in any kind of regulated environment, you know exactly that feeling of finishing a sprint, right? The board is totally clear, the team is high-fiving, and everyone's saying, all right, it's done. But as we're going to see today, that phrase is literally just the beginning of the journey. The real reckoning, the regulatory reckoning, actually happens after that sprint closes. So here's our roadmap for today. We'll be covering the complete compliance lifecycle. We'll look at the truth about Agile change, why sprint completion isn't release, managing maintenance, metrics that actually protect patients, surviving audits, and finally, designing your own compliance. All right, let's jump right into section 1, the truth about Agile change. Now, in the Agile world, we love to talk about how much we welcome change. We want to be responsive to users and adapt to late learning, and that's great. But in medical device software, welcoming change absolutely does not mean you get to escape impact analysis. Look, in your digital tool, dragging and dropping a ticket looks exactly the same whether you're just reshuffling your week's work or completely rewriting a core safety feature. But legally, they are worlds apart. Backlog reprioritization is just changing the order of work. It's a team call, and honestly, it's essentially free. But a requirement change, that alters what the software must actually do. It changes the design input, it has a real risk impact, and it absolutely requires a formal assessment.
So what exactly is an impact assessment? Well, the single most important word here is before. An impact assessment is an evaluation you do before you write a single line of code, not some piece of paperwork you magically invent afterwards just to keep an auditor happy. Think about it. If a requirement carries a risk control, editing that requirement means you are actively changing your risk file. That has to be assessed right away to ensure you aren't accidentally introducing brand new hazards into the patient environment.
Now, you might be wondering, okay, but what if it's just a tiny tweak? Keep in mind that a simple one-number change, like tweaking a deterioration threshold or just changing a timeout, is a fundamental change to clinical behavior. Even doing something as simple as deleting an approved story because you've figured out another way to do it is a change. You literally have to re-verify that the risk control is still effective. Which brings us to a really vital question, one you should probably ask your team today. Is your sprint actually ready for the market? I mean, sure, you've finished all your stories, your definition of done is checked off, and your deployment pipeline is glowing green. But does that mean you can legally ship this product to a hospital? Let's explore that in Section 2, Sprint Completion Isn't Release. This confusion right here, between finishing a sprint and releasing a product, is where so many teams fall completely out of compliance. Sprint completion is just an engineering event. Your definition of done is met, which means the software is potentially releasable. But a formal product release, that is a strict, undeniable quality system act. It requires a hard gate, a comprehensive review of all your evidence, and a named, competent approver who actually signs off on placing a medical device on the market. Basically, a sprint finish is a promise your team makes. A product release is a strict regulatory authorization. And part of getting that regulatory authorization is dealing with defects. Because, let's be real, you will inevitably ship with defects. The regulatory expectation isn't zero defects. That's literally impossible for complex software. The actual expectation is that every single anomaly is assessed, every known defect has to be plainly described, individually risk assessed and dispositioned with a firm decision, like, hey, we fix this now, or we'll accept it with this specific rationale. And crucially, it must be disclosed to users if it's relevant to their safety. I really want you to remember this specific quote. An empty known defect list is a warning sign, not an achievement. Seriously, if you present an auditor with a list of 0 known anomalies for a complex Class C medical product, they're going to know immediately that either you didn't look hard enough or you just didn't bother to write it down. Both of those scenarios are massive red flags. Moving right along to Section 3, Maintenance and Managing Interruptions. Maintenance is where your product is going to spend the vast majority of its life, and it demands the exact same regulatory discipline as your initial development phase. The absolute most urgent form of this is security maintenance. It's actually fascinating because it's the only kind of work where doing absolutely nothing actively makes your product less safe over time, simply because the threat landscape keeps evolving. Even an urgent 2 a.m. cybersecurity patch requires a compressed risk assessment and a pre-named authorizer. The urgency changes the clock. It absolutely does not change your regulatory obligations. And because maintenance work arrives so unpredictably, you can't schedule those 2 a.m. hotfixes, your Agile framework might need to adapt. Scrum assumes you can make nice, predictable 2-week commitments, which completely falls apart when urgent support tickets suddenly flood in. Kanban, on the other hand, pulls unpredictable work as it arrives, uses explicit compliance gates, and honestly, it just fits interrupt-driven maintenance teams so much better than Scrum. Okay, so your team is working super fast and your dashboard looks absolutely amazing. But consider this for a second. If your metrics are perfect, is the patient actually safer? Because it is entirely possible to have a completely green dashboard showing incredible team speed, all while leaving a critical risk control completely unverified. Let's dig into that in Section 4, Metrics that Protect Patients. Look, focusing on the wrong numbers actively harms your safety culture. In a medical device context, metrics aren't just for management to look at, they are actual evidence of control. Take velocity, for example. Velocity is just a planning aid. It's based on totally arbitrary, invented estimates, and it is only valid for forecasting one single team's capacity for their very next sprint. Velocity is not a productivity measure. Doing cross-team velocity comparisons is completely malformed because story points are not a currency with a fixed exchange rate. Comparing one team's 40 points to another team's 25 points tells you absolutely nothing about quality or safety. When a measure like velocity becomes a target, human behavior naturally optimizes to hit that number. Estimates artificially inflate. And in a regulated industry, a gamed metric is a corrupted record. It destroys your data integrity. Worse, it punishes the very team members who take on the really hard, risky safety work, all because that work scores poorly on a purely speed-based dashboard. And the crazy thing is nobody had to lie for this to happen. They just followed the incentives they were given. Instead, you need to focus on patient-protecting metrics. These are the numbers an auditor is actually going to care about. Traceability completionist ensures every single requirement links directly to a tested result. Risk control completion proves your safeguards aren't just coded, but actually verified for effectiveness. Tracking escaped defects tells you if your process is actually catching real issues. These are the metrics that prove your evidence is complete and ultimately that your product is safe. All right, on to Section 5, Surviving the Assessor's Audit. When the assessor finally walks through your door, they aren't just checking if you have a folder full of documents. They want to test whether you actually follow your own process under pressure. At minute 10, they're checking your SOPs. By minute 30, they are pulling a random sample from your backlog to check traceability. If your backlog is your only specification, or if your traceability breaks down, trust me, they will find it fast. By minute 60, they're demanding verification of risk controls. Every single step justifies the next. You simply cannot prepare a sample you haven't been given yet, which means audit readiness has to be an everyday habit. Now, if you use an outsourced testing supplier, you need to pay very close attention to this. Their evidence is your evidence. Feeling like your external QA vendor is part of the team changes absolutely nothing from a regulatory standpoint. Even if they sit in your daily stand-ups and use your Jira board, you must still tightly control and verify their output. You are the manufacturer. You hold the ultimate regulatory obligation. No exceptions. So when you're sitting across the table from that auditor, stick to these survival rules. First, answer only the exact question asked. Second, show the record without narrating some long, distracting story around it. Third, if a piece of evidence doesn't exist, just state that honestly. And above all else, never, ever create or backdate evidence during an audit. If you spot a gap, just offer a corrective plan. A finding is totally survivable. Falsifying a retrospective record is absolutely not. And finally, Section 6, Designing Your Own Compliance. We have covered a huge amount of ground in this explainer, from the daily sprint reality all the way to sitting in the hot seat in the audit room. So you might be sitting there wondering, okay, what is the ultimate Agile framework I should just go out and buy to solve all of this? Well, the hard truth is, there is no universally compliant Agile template. You just can't copy and paste someone else's framework because compliance depends so heavily on your specific product's risk class, your specific team structure, and your unique tools. You must design, document, and defend your own process. You have to do the work to map your activities and bake those rigorous checks right into your definition of done. So I'll leave you with this provocative thought to take back to your team tomorrow. If an auditor walked in and asked you to defend your Agile process right this second, could you prove that it actually protects the patient, or just that it moves fast? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep building safe products.